Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Kyle Juice Michalski, Quentin Q. Crisco, Sonny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce, bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
And welcome back. My name is Quentin Crisco. I am joined by Sonny Verma and Mr. Ron Luce here. We are Bears on Tap. Bears are in a bye week, sitting at 4-2, but we have plenty to talk about with you guys, even though it's a bit slow of a news time this week right now. What we're doing, we're going through the entire defense, grading every player, every position group, and then at the end of it, we're each going to give a hot take on the Bears defense. We're gonna let them fly. I was trying to find some wild stuff today. I wanted to get the wildest thing that I could sell myself to believe. I'm not sure if I ended up with anything that wild, but I got some options. So first of all, how are you guys doing? Starting with Sonny, how's your night going, man?
It's going well. Usually this show is all about previewing the next opponent, and so it did sadden me a little bit that we don't have Bears football this Sunday, but I get it. You know, the team needs to heal up a little bit, so I'm trying to be selfless here. And it was nice at least spending the last day going over some of these defensive players and units and just kind of, getting a sense of what the season's been like. So I think it's going to be a fun one today.
Ron, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Q. I am still awaiting fall warmth. It is colder than absolute hell in my house right now. So I'm just insinuating being on a beach right now. I've got something on ice here in my trusty Bears cup. I've got the shades on to mimic the sunlight that I have coming from my lamp here. But guys, I'm doing well because I'm also basking in how good the Bears are, even though we're in a bye week. So I'm good, man. Q, how are you, my friend?
It's a good time to be a Bears fan, man. It's been a while since we felt this way. Like the last time that they were 4-2 this far in was probably what? Like Nick Foles era? Maybe. I think they were 5-1 that year. So maybe 4-1, something like that. So it had to be that year where Nick Foles took the job from Trubisky. What was that, 2020? So it's been a while. It's been a while since we could feel anything like this. And even that year felt kind of fraudulent.
I was going to say, this is a different feeling.
Yeah,
this is the better football team than that one. Like, again, you just brought it up. It was Nick Foles. Like, this is a little special, the guy that we have under center right now. So it's been a really long time. I'm starting to think it might be the Lovey years when I felt this optimistic about having, of our football team.
Probably 2018. I'd say, might have been misguided as far as, the quarterback and maybe the head coach, depending on your opinion there. But, 2018 felt pretty dang good, I would say. But before we jump into our sheet, let's address the one question we got here. Bears at Washington, who wins? Washington is good based on what Raul has heard. What do you guys think?
Daniels throws to one side of the field. That's what I think.
Bears win. Caleb wins the showdown. Bears fans already know it. The rest of the nation's about to find out about it. By the way, Caleb Williams threw for 4 touchdowns on Sunday. Jaden Daniels has thrown for 4 touchdowns all season long. Just a little note wanted to pass along.
And all I know is that you give Matt Eberflus bye or even the mini buys, he tends to find the other team's weaknesses pretty well and attacks them pretty well. So I feel pretty good about that matchup. But we'll see. Washington's playing great. But now let's get into the meat and potatoes of our show here. We are going to go through every player who has played at least 10% of the Bears defensive snaps and give them a grade. And that's going to culminate. If you're not viewing this, I suggest going and checking us out on YouTube because we got some graphics up here that are going to auto-populate and do some Excel nerd stuff that I love.
If you like Bears and graphics and spreadsheets, Bears on Tap is the show.
Yeah.
Hit that subscribe button immediately.
Exactly, Sonny. Where spreadsheets and football combine forces, as I like to say. Now, on this sheet, so we have every player to play at least 10% of the snaps. Then we've got their PFF grade and their positional weight. So what the positional weight is, it's their snap count divided by the total snap counts of every player at their position on this sheet. So like Kevin Byard has played 49% of the safety snaps between these three players listed. So that's how we're going to get our GPA for the position. For the safety position, it's going to be just the weighted grade that we're giving each of Kevin Byard, Jaquan Brisker, and Elijah Hicks. Now, Sonny, question for you. Me and Ron have already input grades in here. They're not final. We might adjust them throughout the show. But would you rather give your grade before seeing ours or after seeing ours?
Let's just see yours. I think just it's fine. I'm not going to change mine. I have a pretty good idea of where I'm going to go with it. But this way, if I'm way off on one, all the pressure's not on me every single time we go down.
Okay. So kicking it off here with Kevin Byard, I'm giving him a B+. Got a strong PFF grade here, but I wanted to give him an A- to start, but then I'm sitting there going, so we see our grading scale over here. An A is an all-pro starter. An A- is a blue chip starter. And I'm not sure I can call him a blue chip just based on he's fairly new to the defense. He has mattered a lot, but I don't know that he misses a game. I feel like the impact of the defense is as massive based on like an average backup going in his spot as it is for a guy like a Montez Sweat, a Tremaine Edmonds. I still think Kevin Byard's really good. I don't think he is quite what he was as far as his range goes. So I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too technical with that, but let's throw it to Ron because he gave him an A-. Ron, what were your thoughts here?
I did give him an A-. I'm not going to get too in depth on it right now. That's all I'm going to say. But he's an A- player for me.
Okay. Sonny, what are you thinking?
I had him as an A- too. He's a clear upgrade from what we've had last year. And I think one of the key reasons I'm also going to make a proclamation a little bit later on in the show. I just think he's had such a huge impact on that secondary, which has, made that secondary, one of the best in the NFL, if not the best in the NFL.
Yeah, I understand it. I full like I said, I wanted to give him the A-, but I was like, I just had a really hard time jumping him up above a key starter as opposed to the blue chip starter. Like I just felt like key starter made a bit more sense. And I am showing off all our grades right there. But moving on to Jaquan Brisker, I gave him a B+. So I had him on par with Kevin Byard. And part of it was the way that Brisker's played so far this year. I feel like him and Byard are on par, but I had a hard time putting Brisker above key starter. So it was kind of like, I feel like the impact of losing Byard and Brisker is probably equal in my mind because of how impactful he has been as a downhill football player. So B+ to me made sense. I had him and Byard equal. Ron, what were you thinking with Brisker?
I had Brisker right now in my head. He's a starter. I think because of the nature of the too high shell, Brisker's not the greatest option at that strong spot. So I think for that reason, like he's a starter. I think I would even potentially call him a B and not a B-. Maybe I was being a little salty when I was putting these together earlier. But I think overall, like he's a really good football player. I love his downhill nature. Yeah, it results in him getting some injuries sometimes because he is so physical, but he brings an element to this Bears defense that you have to respect regardless. Though that being said, I think there could be guys that might just play the system a little better for what he is asked to do. Now, granted, Eberflus can get creative, and I think he's done a good job, from keeping him exposed largely over his career and tenure as a Bear. But I just think there's other options. So that's kind of where I was leaning. Maybe I would promote him to a B, but that's about as far as I'd go.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. Like, I don't know. It's kind of weird when you're going through this because you have an idea in your head, like, okay, I'm basing these grades on this. But then I'm like, is it the impact I feel like he's had to the defense? Or is it what I think, how good is he in this defense? How good is he in his best role? Like, so there's multiple ways to kind of look at it and weigh it. But Sonny, what are you thinking with Brisker?
I had him as a solid B, so right in the middle. The way I kind of graded that, I'm using this grading scale, is if we had to replace player X in free agency next year, is how big of a concern would it be for me? A starter, like you're kind of concerned about, Brisker, I think if we had to replace him, I'd be a little bit more like in tune with who we're going to get to replace him with. I think it would be a little bit harder than just a normal starter. And by that definition, I give him a slight upgrade from a regular starter. I think he's a little bit more important than that.
Yeah, I think that works out perfectly because we got the full spectrum with the B grades there and just ended up at a flat B on his final grade. Now, on to Elijah Hicks. I don't feel like there's as much to talk about with this. He's only played in one game. I thought he played well. By our grading scale, quality depth is a C. He looked like quality depth. You asked me before the season, I probably would have given him a C minus. So a C makes sense. But Ron, where was your head at?
Yeah, same spot. I think he's quality depth. Like he didn't play terribly. I know everybody's like, it's the Jaguars. I don't care. He looked fine. He played his role and he executed, and that's all you can ask the guy to do. Again, he's stepping in. Quality depth is needed on football teams. I think Elijah Hicks is a nice football player, so that's why I'll give him the C.
Sonny, where are you
I think Ron said it perfectly. Basically, he has a role on his team. He was asked to perform that role on Sunday. He performed it. And so I'm perfectly okay with the C right there.
All right, then a C it is overall for Brisker. Now, on to the cornerback room. We got Jaylen Johnson to start this thing off, and I think we're going to be pretty lockstep here, but we don't have an A+ in this just because I couldn't figure out quite how to make the numbers work with a GPA and an A versus an A+, but maybe I'm just numbers dumb. But anyways, I gave him an A, highest grade we could have, all-pro starter. He's having an all-pro season in my mind. He might be one of the best cornerbacks, if not the best cornerback in the NFL right now. He's just playing lights-out football. Ron, what were you thinking here?
Every highlights Twitter page on Bears Twitter, Bears social media, sometimes the NFL social media as a whole, crazy statistics about what Jaylen Johnson has done and the minimal amount of touchdowns he's allowed. The guy is truly one of the best in the league. I continue to think his contract is a bargain for the Bears. He's still getting paid. He's still amongst the top of the league, rightfully so. But there's an easy argument to be made that he should be one of the top 2 highest paid corners in the NFL. And they got him at a bargain price, in my opinion. He wants to be here. And he's, in my opinion, one of the staples of the defense at this point. He's been unbelievable.
Sonny?
I'm same. Jaylen Johnson, to me, would get, if we did the offense on this episode as well, he would have the highest grade on the entire team. You've all said it. Bears Twitter has talked about it. No, that says A-. It's definitely an A+.
Oh, I'm fixing it. The autofill on this was getting me, but we got it right.
Yeah, no. Clean A. Best player on this team. He's completely shut down. He's performed his obligations exactly what he's supposed to do. He's earning that contract and more, as Ron said.
And I think one more thing to note with Johnson, before the season, I was a little nervous that Tyreek Stevenson taking a step would mean Johnson would get attacked more, and that would impact his stats some. He hasn't been attacked more. Like, I don't think Stevenson's been bad, but like teams are still just going at Tyreek Stevenson and saying, we're not throwing towards Jaylen Johnson. That means something to me. But getting to Tyreek Stevenson, I gave him a B-. In our grading scale, a B- is a starter. Not quite a plus starter, not a key starter, but a starting caliber player in the NFL. And I think that's the way Tyreek Stevenson's playing so far. If I'm being honest, I was hoping for a bit more of a step from him to this point, but he's been okay. He's allowed, I think it's like 270 yards. It's somewhere around 20th in the NFL for cornerbacks. So you'd like his number to be a bit better than 20th most receiving yards allowed, but he's also just being attacked constantly because no one wants to throw towards Jaylen Johnson. Ron, where was your head at here?
I look at it as maybe I'm a little more in the sense of looking at growth when it comes to my grade for Tyreek Stevenson. I think where you look at him, I think he becomes a key starter in this defense if he has another season of just development. It's not going to be linear, right? There's going to be those games where we're like, oh, he does not look good here. But as long as at the end of the season he improves and we see that chart climb as the course of the season goes on, I think he's going to become a key starter in this defense. And I think they need him to be that if they want to surprise people this year. So maybe that's why I went based on a little bit of importance here as well, I think, for what his role is because he's being attacked so much in that defense. So that's kind of why I went a little more optimistic with a B+.
And Sonny, what are you thinking?
I'm right in the middle again of both of you. For me, again, his numbers might not. I'm kind of repeating you guys. His numbers might not be as great, but it's because he's playing opposite of Jaylen Johnson, and we need the guy playing opposite of Jaylen Johnson to hold his own. And in my opinion, he has been, because otherwise that side could be exploited all season long. But other teams really haven't been able to do that, and so solid starter for me.
And Sonny, do you want to start do we want to do like snake draft this where like you start Kyler Gordon, then I start Jaylen Jones, so we're not like stealing your talking points?
Sure.
Okay. I just wanted to ask if you're prepared for that. Basically, I don't want to throw you on the spot.
Put him on the spot. Put him on the spot. Put him on the spot.
Next up here, we got Kyler Gordon. Sonny, what are you thinking here?
Kyler Gordon, again, take a look at pretty much all of my grades for players that matter here. And in the secondary, I should give you my grade. B+ for me here. Kyler Gordon plays a huge part of what I started off the show saying, that I think this might be the best secondary in the entire NFL. He does his role. He fits with the defensive system very well. I think he's continuing to grow. I think his contract is up after next year. And I think Ryan Poles has got some really interesting decisions to make, because I think it's him and Brisker, both of their contracts. And so, but I do think he's a foundational piece of this team. So I want to give him his credit.
Ron, what are you thinking here?
I take everything that Sonny just had to say, and I just take it up a slight step, because I do think he's one of the best nickel corners in the league. And it's just, I think the way too that he fits this defense, he's kind of almost a little bit of a safety in the run game for this run defense at times, because he is so aggressive. He can come on the blitz off the edge. He's got a little more grit to him than your traditional corner, especially playing in that nickel spot. I love everything he does, and to me, he's just a tick above a key starter. I really do think they see him as a blue chip player, because he's just such a freak athlete at a position that needs freak athletes to be, a key piece of your defense, and he's doing that right now in that nickel spot.
Yeah, and ultimately, I'm sitting here going, I agree with a lot of what you guys said. I think he's playing really well, really good football. I hate to see him get injured. I think he's one of the best nickels at blitzing and fitting the run in the NFL. He has given up a few more yards than I was kind of surprised by how many yards he has given up in like per coverage snap in the slot. I hadn't really noticed that in games, which might be a testament to, I do think he's playing better than those numbers say, but ultimately I had a hard time putting him at blue chip. I couldn't get him above key starter in my mind, of just like, a key starter is a really key player on your football team, but a blue chip is a foundational piece to me. I just had a hard time bringing Kyler Gordon up to that. Now, we're getting into the depth here of cornerbacks, and so we're getting to Jaylen Jones. I gave Jaylen Jones a C+. That means a rotational player. He's not quite a rotational player, but he's a guy who I'd be comfortable if they had a role for a corner in a rotation spot. To me, Jaylen Jones fits that. He could play that. He could be that guy that I trust to be on the field. So C+ for me there. Ron, where are you at with Jaylen Jones?
Thinking a lot of the same. I think I consider him high quality depth, so a C doesn't do it justice, and I think that's where the C+ comes from. I do think there is potential opportunity for him to be a rotational guy, especially in instances where maybe the defense had a long drive and you want you want a Tyreek Stevenson who maybe got beat up a little bit to get a breather or two extra for a couple plays. I think he could play that kind of role in this defense. But overall, I think he's high quality depth. So I didn't quite feel comfortable giving him a C, and so we'll lean more optimistic with the C+.
Sonny, what are you thinking? I
think C+ is a good grade for him. He's a guy who I'm glad is on the football team, right? If I gave him a C or a C-, he's interchangeable, but when Jaylen Jones comes into the game, like I'm comfortable that he's going to do whatever he needs to do. So I'm going with consensus here, C+.
That sounds good. Now, on to the backup nickel, who just got snaps against the Jaguars in London this past week after Kyler Gordon went down. Josh Blackwell, starting it off with Sonny. What are you thinking about Josh Blackwell here? You're on mute, Sonny. Sonny, you're on mute.
Sorry, there's a reason.
There we go.
I said I started off saying Jaylon Johnson. He's one of those guys where when he's in the game, I'm glad he's in the game for the role that he's doing. Josh Blackwell is one of those guys who I just kind of mentioned previously. To me, is kind of interchangeable. There's a couple Blackwells out there that if we lost him, I don't think it'd be a hit to our depth. But when he's in the game, it's not like I don't want him playing more snaps than he needs to be. So I put him as a C-.
Okay. And Ron, where's your head at here?
I like Josh Blackwell mostly too because of what he brings on special teams. I think for being a Ryan Poles waiver claim in his first year as general manager, I think he's been a really good player for depth reasons because of what he does on the special team side and because he can step in as a corner. I think he plays a little better on the outside personally as a corner, and that's where we've seen him in past years. But with some increased depth, he moves into the nickel spot. Again, I think he's I think he's quality depth. Like he's a player you're happy on the football team, but maybe it's not just because he's a defensive player. That special teams aspect for me brings something to his grade. So I like him right where he is at a C right now.
Yeah, and I had a C as well. And a part of that was the difference between a C- being depth and plus special teams versus a C being quality depth. His versatility to play inside, outside is really the differentiator there for me. That's what makes him quality depth, his ability to back up multiple roles if he needs to. But truly, I was close to a C- like Sonny said. So it was kind of in between to me here. And part of that was just based on the PFF grade. I do think he played better than his PFF grade in London, but because, when he left the field, you kind of didn't really notice that much that Kyler was gone. Like you could tell, but it felt like the defense didn't miss much of a step with that swap out. But ultimately that puts us full grade for Josh Blackwell at a C. And now we are over to the linebackers. And starting this off with Tremaine Edmonds. I'm giving him a B+. And I was close to giving him a blue chip with the way he's been playing this year, the A-, because I think he's been playing out of his mind. I couldn't bring myself up to blue chip without his run defense taking a step up, which it's been better this year. It definitely has. But to be a true blue chip, I need you to be a full factor in the pass and the run game at linebacker. And I feel like he's a 3/4 of the way factor in the run game, maybe half the way there in the run game, and 125% there in the pass game as a factor. So I end up at the B+ here as a key starter. Ron, where's your head at?
In hindsight, I feel like I was a little down on Tremaine Edmonds now that I thought about it. I won't raise him more than just to a B, Q. But I will say he's been, like you said, he's been very good. I think because of some of what's lost in the run game might be why I dock him a little more, especially from that Mike position. And I know we were spoiled with the likes of Brian Urlacher playing that position long ago.
Like they used to.
It'd be that way sometimes. Anyway, I still think he's an electric football player for what he's asked to do and what his role is in this defense. So I call him a plus starter. I would fringe on the key starter Q. Instead of a 3.3 or a 3, he's a 3.15 for me, if that makes any kind of sense.
Okay. Sonny, what are you thinking here? Sorry, I was having a formatting issue there.
I'm good. I'm with you, Q. I don't think he's irreplaceable, but I think he would be very hard to replace, and his absence would be very much felt. I know you guys you mentioned already his running inabilities to defend, or at least not, compared to his passing side, but he's still a really good football player and a guy who I'm really glad is a part of our linebacking unit.
Okay, so B+ for you, Sonny?
Or
B?
I think I said B. No, I said B+. Yeah, you're right. B+.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that brings him up to a B+ overall. And then so TJ Edwards. Well, we'll start this off with you, Sonny. How you feeling about TJ?
TJ for me is an A-. I think he is our best linebacker. I don't think at least this year. He's just a playmaker. And I think he's a different, I've been talking and lauding the cornerbacks all episode long, talking about how that's the best room in the country. Well, I think TJ is the star of our linebacking room, which is one of the better units in the country. He's everywhere. And so, for A-, according to grade scale, he's better than a key starter. He's not quite a superstar, which is how I look at the letter A. So A- for me.
Hey, you can tell Sonny's been talking a lot of Illini football over at the Lockdown Illini when he's talking about in the country.
Fair enough.
Ron, where are you at with TJ Edwards?
I think a little above a key starter, but not quite a blue chip is where I'd put him. He was a great find, and I think he's a great just encapsulation of Chicago because he's from the city and he knows what Bears football is. And he plays like a Bears linebacker that we think of in the historic, just list of names that have played the spot in franchise history. I think he's not quite blue chip, and I think that's just because of what his position is. And I know you have the GPA weightings for positional value, but maybe that's where I went in on the little bit of the individual side as well, because that weak side backer, the Lance Briggs role, is not the superstar, but is a critically important player nonetheless. So I gave him a B+, but it's like a B+ with like a gold sticky star attached to it as well.
Yeah, I gave him a B+ initially, and my thoughts were similar to yours, Ron, but it's not sitting well with me. I've got some heartburn on it, and I gotta kick him up to blue chip. I think this guy is the heart and soul of the defense. He wears the dot on his helmet. He's making the calls out there, and he's a hometown kid. That's got to be worth an extra point for me. So, I'm kicking him up to A- after hearing Sonny talk little about it, and I'm just sitting here stewing doesn't feel right. All right, moving on to Jackie Sanborn. I'm giving Jack a B. He's playing that Sam linebacker role, so not getting a ton of snaps here. His weight here for the linebacker group is pretty small. You haven't noticed him a lot. In the Texans game, I noticed him, and he was flying around making some nice plays, but ultimately they stay in nickel so much. He just hasn't had that big of a role. So it's hard for me to say he's much more than a plus starter because, is a Sam a starter in today's league? I don't know. I think he could probably be a solid to plus starter at will. Probably, I don't know about Mike as much just because I'm not, at least in this defense, with the coverage responsibilities there. But at will, I think he could be a plus starter there. But moving on to Ron. Ron, what do you think about the neck?
I think the neck, it's a shame that the Sam linebacker is not as important at the NFL as it used to be. I think there's a little bit of shame in that because I appreciate the Nick Roaches and the Hunter Hillenmeyers of old. That third guy in the linebacking core that truly did mean something to the team. I think even when you go back to the 85 team and just those days of the Sam linebacker, things were a little different, but right, it was Otis and Mike were the big guns, but Wilbur Boudier Marshall was still a badass. I miss that position getting more run, and maybe it will later in the season when the elements play a factor in at Soldier Field and you got to pound the rock a little more. Running the football is not dead by any means. It's just evolved a little bit, and I think it'll get more smash mouth the later in the year we get. For that reason, he's a plus starter, a guy that was undrafted. He's, another guy from the area, so that's got to give him a little bit of points there too, Q. I think he's a plus starter. B is a great place for him.
I guess
I
think I'm going to be the harshest grader here. B- for me, just because of what we kind of talked about. Just value, his skill set would have been a lot more valued in the past. Right now, he's I think Q, you mentioned, he just isn't noticeable a lot on the field this year. And so I'm glad he's on the team. That's what I classify as a starter. But if we lost him, it would be a bummer. But I don't know if it would be something that all of a sudden we would really be struggling over.
You feel like Sewell could step into his role and it wouldn't feel like a giant drop off.
Right.
That makes sense. Now we're into the edge rushers. Demarcus Walker, kind of a hybrid edge rusher, D tackle. I'm giving him a B- here I think he's a starter. Really, I think his best role is probably a rotational player, but I like the juice he brings. I like the energy he brings every week. So I think that he earns a spot as a starter in a lot of defenses in the league. A top 10 defense, he's probably more rotational guy in my mind of like you're coming in on passing downs or you're just playing base end on running downs and a rotation on passing downs on the inside type guy. So B- for me. But Ron, how do you feel about Demarcus Walker?
Yeah, Demarcus Walker reminds me a lot of probably one of my most underappreciated favorite Bears, and that's Alex Brown. He's kind of a poor man's version of Alex Brown in my eyes. I really enjoy watching him play. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a solid starter, especially like you said, that base end in the run game. He can rush a little bit from the outside, but probably is better suited rushing from an interior technique. I still think he's an important enough starter to the team that the B- is a good spot for him in my eyes.
Yeah, so me and Ron are kind of lockstep on that one. Sonny, where are you at with Demarcus Walker?
We got team unity going on here. B-. I think what we ask him to do, he's performing. Is he a star by any stretch of the imagination? No, but is he a good football player? Yes. B-. Is he a starter? Yes. So B-.
All right, moving on to Mr. Montez Sweat. Sonny, let's start this one off with you. Where are your thoughts on Mr. Sweat?
This year, I want to say, I'm going to say A- just because the attention and the gravity he brings on that defensive line. He opens up space for some of the other guys. I don't think his numbers are as high as they've been in past, but I think it's because like this was such a weakness or potential weakness coming into this season. Who was going to start opposite Sweat? A lot of the game plans are revolving around making sure Sweat doesn't get to the quarterback and beat you. And while he isn't getting the numbers that he's getting otherwise, I think he's a reason that a guy like Demarcus Walker or the linebackers are playing as well as they are, just because the gravity that attracts Montez Sweat.
Mm-hmm. Ron, how you grading Mr. Sweat?
He's still a blue chip player to me, for all the reasons that Sonny cited. He's so important to the rest of the team. I have a second hot take about the defense that I kind of have in my back pocket in case Sonny and I are a little lockstep. So I'll let you go first when we get to that portion, because I think we're on the same page about something. But he does so much for everybody else on that line right now. I think that further highlights, though, the dip in production from a numbers standpoint, Sonny, like you said, is just how important, like if the Bears got that one other edge rusher on the other side, like how much more dangerous he would be in the pass rush. I think he's a blue chip starter right now, but as soon as they get that guy opposite of him, he's probably an all-pro player for at least 2 or 3 seasons before it's all said and done here.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I've got the A- on him, so blue chip starter, and I think it was week 3. I saw some chatter about Montez Sweat being kind of disappointing this year. I went over to NFL Plus and I pulled up, all the Bears pressures where he was on the field. And it was like, what if you're watching all the Bears pressures with him on the field and just watching him, you start to understand, like as Sonny put it so eloquently, the gravity that he holds and how his presence is creating opportunities for others. And it's not something that I think is showing up in the statistics or even the PFF grade as much as I think it should. Here, he is a big part of why the defense is working right now. His presence, the attention that offenses give him. You got to keep in mind, Javon Dexter, breakout year, right? He's having a great season. I'm a huge Gervon Dexter fan. I've been standing for him since the draft where he was picked. But he's playing next to Montez Sweat constantly. They both play the same side of the ball. That I don't think it's a coincidence that he's having this nice breakout while Sweat's numbers are kind of lower. I think that they are teaming up together a lot and very well. Now, moving on to Darrell Taylor. I'm giving him a C+. I think he's a rotational guy. I've really liked what we've seen from him. I think he's been a steal for what they gave up for him. And really, like I did not like you go back and look at his draft profile. You see the mention of all the athleticism, all the bend. There's a lot to be excited about this guy. You flip on the Seattle tape of him, you see some flashes of it, but you never saw it this consistently. And it seems like he's really turned a corner right now, but I still don't trust him that much against the run. And at that point, you have a ceiling. You're a rotational guy if I can't trust you against the run as a defensive lineman. So ultimately, he ends up with a C plus being that rotational player for me. He could kick up to a B minus, maybe even a B if he became more aware against the run and stronger in that standpoint. But Ron, what are you thinking?
Q, I'll keep it pretty short. For everything you just said, you are spot on. We are very much in lockstep here. The only thing I'll add is every defensive line needs a Tasmanian devil, and Darrell Taylor's theirs in the pass rush, so that's why he's a beautiful, beautiful C plus. A C plus that I would put on the fridge C plus, but he's still a rotational player in this defense.
Yeah, that's a C plus in what, like advanced
trigonometry. Physics 513, yeah, some ridiculous nonsense like that.
That's like what I was as a student, a C plus plus. You know.
Yeah.
Sonny, is that what you think of Darrell Taylor, or are you taking this a different direction?
I was actually closer to a C. I get what you guys are saying, but you guys made some convincing arguments, but I'm going to stick with the C. I just think, at this point, like, I'm glad he's on the team, and I think when he comes in, he provides his value. And it was a great transaction by Poles, but I don't know if it's, how meaningful he is to the team, like in the big picture.
All right, and then starting with you, Sonny, moving on to Austin Booker. What are your thoughts here?
NA. I wish we played him more. I'd probably have to say C. Let's just say C. I've got quality in the sense that I think he's really, really talented. It's hard for me to put anything more than that. And okay, so you guys have similar grades.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to put anything more than that just because he hasn't really had the snaps to show it. I'm excited about his future. I think hopefully this is his floor. And the next time we do this, he shows up as a C plus or a B minus. But for now, I'll just say I'm glad he's on the team. Quality depth, C.
And Ron, you've got him marked down with a C plus. Talk us through that.
I think he's a little more of, he has the potential to be a rotational player, and it's very simple to get him to my grade. I think it's just a matter of he needs to play a little more. I think because of Darrell Taylor's effectiveness, he's unfortunately stealing some time that probably would have went to Austin Booker. And I think in the limited time that we have seen him, he's also playing right now as a young player, but he's at least playing with that kind of balls to the walls energy that you need from a young player with his kind of skill set. Brian Baldinger the other day on his social media accounts is praising Booker because he's running downfield and making the tackle on the running back 10 yards down the field. I respect the hustle. I like hustle. I like guys that buy into the defensive culture, the hits principle, right? Booker's doing that. I think if he gets more tick, which I think is truly coming at some point this season, again, we talked about that non-linear development. I think he's going to get up there by the end of the season. So that's why I went with a C+.
Yeah, and I've got him at a C. I was somewhere between a C plus and a C. Like, I feel like at his, I don't want to say his floor because there's more development that needs to happen, but in his NFL career, in my opinion, he should be a rotational player at the least, right? Like he's a rotational pass rusher at the very least, in my mind. And I couldn't quite get there for right now, though, just because I can't project it that much, and he just, like you guys got to, he hasn't been on the field that much. So for me, I see him as quality depth. I like him in the rotation. I wish he was getting a little more run, but until he does, I have a hard time putting him above that. Now, to change it up a little bit, Ron, where are you at with Javon Dexter?
Oh boy, I get to be put on the spot. This is fun. I think he's a blue chip starter. This plays into my backup hot take that I have, if need be. I think he's becoming so important. We talk about how important the 3 technique is in that defense. And I think we're seeing it because of how well he and Montez Sweat kind of play together. right? We're seeing the development. We're seeing the growth. He's a physical freak, which we know Ryan Poles loves his physical freaks because these guys start to learn and grasp the technique of the game. They become game changers at the position. And Javon Dexter is only 23 years old. He's really young. I think there's so much more there, and I think we're going to continue to see it over the season. So for me, he's a blue chip starter on this defense.
Sonny, do you agree?
Absolutely agree. I think he's an A-, but he's a guy who next year at 24 years old and at 25 years old could classify as an A or A+ if Q ever figures out how to do the math.
Someday I'll get it. GPA. So my high school, our GPA scale was 5, and I have never fully figured out a 4-point GPA scale, but most people's are 4. So I was like, I gotta do this on a 4 scale. I don't really know. I did a quick Google search and like just went with that, and the graphic that they had only went up to A. So I was like, screw it, good enough for Google Images, probably made by AI, good enough for me. Like, let's go. But back on topic, back to Gervon Dexter Sr. I might be a little hard on him because he's my guy, right? Like, I felt like in that draft, that was my guy. I felt like one of the only like Bears fans who wasn't like, he stands straight up. He doesn't get off the football. I was like, oh, he'll fix it. Just wait. But I'm probably a little harder on him because of that. So I've got him at a B+ as a key starter. I still need to see, like, he has grown against the run a lot this year, but I still need to see more. Like, it's in there. I know it is, but he can get his pad level lower. He can still fight a little better with his hands when taking on blocks, and just that trigger between playing run lanes to rushing the passer is still a tick slow. So until that all kind of starts to grow just a little more, he's a B+ for me. At that point, he goes up to blue chip starter. Now, going back to Sonny, Andrew Billings.
I'm going to be curious to see what your guys' grades are here, so I'm not going to look at the screen. Andrew Billings, for me, it's like, do I grade him on how he's played this year for this team, or what do I grade his overall talent-wise?
And by the way, you can look at the screen. I covered it back up.
Okay. For me, thank you, Q. For me, I put him at A-, but basing strictly on how he's played this year for us. Q, you're the one who's kind of turned me on him, brought him more to my attention. I just think he's so underrated with the amount he got paid for, the contract that he got, the way we brought him in. He fills up so many holes for the Bears, and I'm shocked at how little he's talked about. And I'm guilty of that because, again, I never really acknowledged how good he was at what he did until Q brought him up to me. I think probably in the NFL, he's a B+ type of player, like just a very good starter. But I just really like what I've seen from him this year on this team. So I gave him an A-.
Ron, where are you at?
I'll be brutally honest with you. I don't entirely remember. I was a little harder on him. Maybe it's because I played the one technique once upon a time back in my day. I think he's a key starter on this team. I think he would become even more effective and even more of an A- type player if they had that one more D tackle they could really rely on. Like, I think that's what they're missing. The one more end opposite of Sweat and one more D tackle that you could just rely on. He doesn't need to be an all-pro. He doesn't need to be a Pro Bowler. You can just rely on him. Because to me, then Billings becomes even more effective in the run game, even more effective, even in the limited pass game we've gotten to see him in. He's rushing the passer and getting in guys' faces. He's getting national love. But I went a little harder on him. I'm going to go a little harder on the big boys. So that's kind of why I went with a B+. But I love you guys have swung me to be happily acceptable with the A- as the final grade and for not listening to Ron Luce in this situation.
And so I was close to going A on this. Like, I love Andrew Billings. I believe if he played on a more talented defensive line, he would be the star of it. For football nerds, he would be the star of like one of the best D lines in football. He's on a okay to kind of good D line, and he's the absolute star in my mind. He's the guy who is constantly popping on tape, and like Sonny said, I'm always shocked that he does not get more attention than he does. But really, nose tackles aren't all pro starters. It sucks. They're not. Like, and that was one of the blocks here in my mind. It's like, if Michael Pierce is right up there with Billings for one of my favorite defensive players to watch, Michael Pierce doesn't make all pro teams. So like that was just a mental block here for me. And ultimately I ended up at the A- because of it. Now, next one here, Chris Williams. So I gave Chris Williams a D+, and this is nothing to do with I like Chris Williams as a project, as a guy who has some nice burst, and I think there's something that you can grow there. I don't like him as your DT3, and this is more grade based on him versus him compared to his role on this team, not him as a football player. Because him as a football player, I think there's something there, but him as your number one DT off the bench on a D line that likes a heavy rotation, that's a questionable depth move to me. That's a project who is being miscast right now. So D+ for me. Ron, where'd you go here?
I was much more generous. I think because I do like what we've seen a little bit of. I think he is quality depth when he is that DT4 Q, like you said. I think with Pickens out, he's a little more overexposed than you probably would like him to be at this point. But I kind of like that he's one of like Eberflus's guys, because you know how every coach has just that dude that they always bring back or like bring with them, because like they just do everything you ask them to do, and they understand the defense conceptually, and they can kind of play multiple roles even though they might not be the most talented player. He's kind of that. Maybe I see that in myself, and that was the type of player that I was in my lifetime. Nonetheless, I feel like I was a little more optimistic on him, but he's fine. He's a C.
Sonny, where are
C- for me. A guy, he fills the role. He's fine. If we had to go out and find a replacement, I wouldn't be losing any sleep over it.
Okay, so that ends him up at like a C-, somewhere around there with the averages. Now, last one, we'll start this one off with you, Ron. Byron Cowart.
I admittedly do not even recall what I put for him. I put C-. Maybe I was being a little more I was nicer, I think, in my grades than most. I would probably lean more toward the D range in some capacity here, but I gave him a C-. I was feeling upbeat about the Bears. He's fine. He's depth. Maybe you play him a little bit on special teams. He's fine.
Sonny?
Q's just been a really tough grader the last 3 weeks.
He really has.
Every episode the last 3 weeks, he's had a comment where I'm just like, really, Q? Come on.
I want more.
I'm going to go with you, Ron. I'm not going to give anyone on this team less than a C-. So let's go with the C- here.
I mean, I'm the jerk here, but
explain yourself, Q.
I don't think Byron Cowart's an NFL football player. I think he's a practice squad football player who can borderline be on the roster. I mean, I can bump this up to a D-, but I can't really go higher than that, 'cause I think his history tells you exactly what he is. He's bounced around as questionable depth and practice squad, and I haven't seen anything from him with the Bears this year to tell me otherwise. So I have a really hard time going above that. And ultimately, where I'm sitting here looking at this defensive roster of who has actually played, and I'm going, these backup D tackles can't stop the run. That's the one weakness on this defense. I can't give them a grade that reflects higher than my opinion of what this overall defense is. And to me, that's the biggest issue on this defense. When the rotational D tackles are in, you can't stop the run. I need to reflect that in my grades.
You have brought me back down to earth a little bit, Q, with your explanation. That is fair.
Okay.
Keep your negativity away from me. They're 15-2.
All right. So that puts Cowart at a D+. So overall at safety, we're at a 3.18. So that's like what, a B+, somewhere right around there. Then at cornerback, we're at a 3.36. So let's call that like a, would that be an A- or a B+ based?
We're feeling positive here. Just round it up. It's an A-.
A-. Okay. Linebacker, A-. edge, we're at what, a B minus?
That sounds
And
about right.
Interior D line, we are at a B flat. So
Not bad.
ultimately, I mean, this defense, we're feeling pretty good about it. Like average overall here, we're talking about a 3.36 GPA, so a B plus GPA on the defense. It's feeling good. Feeling right. Now, let's get to our hot takes, gentlemen. The thing everyone's waiting for, the thing that's on the thumbnail. Sonny, what's your hot take about the Chicago Bears defense?
I had a couple hot takes, but I think I'm settling on the warm take. But I think it's a hot take. To me, it's a hot take. I think Eric Washington saved Eberflus's job.
Mm.
Last year, at the beginning of the year, the defense was struggling. The whole team was in turmoil, and Eberflus took over the defense, and they leveled up. And they were a big part of the reason the team had turned around on that second half of the season. This offseason, Shane Waldron got all the publicity, and that's where all the eyes were focused on when it comes to our assistant coach hiring. Eberflus hired Washington, and Washington has kept the Bears defense exactly where it needed to be, if not leveled it up even a little bit more from last year. That's allowed Eberflus to not have to spend so much resources coaching defense and spending time with the defense and really working with Shane Waldron, in particular after the first 2 or 3 weeks, and trying to, hey, what can we fix here? What can we move around? Let's it allowed him to be more of a CEO level head coach. And right now, there's no more. You don't see the fire Eberfluses anymore, and I think Eric Washington is a big part of that.
I think that's a very valid take. I think that one is, it's one that, so before this episode earlier today, I was struggling to come up with some, so I threw it out on Twitter. I had a bunch of responses about what are your hot takes about the Chicago Bears defense. I only saw Eric Washington's name once, and I think that's one that probably deserved more shout out, more discussion around it, because I think that as I was coming up with my list and I saw that one thrown at me, I was like, does Eric Washington deserve more credit than he's getting? Because it kind of feels that way. But Ron, 1, do you have thoughts on Sonny's take? And 2, what's your hot take?
I really like Sonny's. I think that's something that I haven't given enough thought and kind of appreciation to. So I appreciate that hot take, because it forces me to focus on that aspect of the game plan. I think that's something that I think a lot of Bears fans can appreciate now down the stretch. Good reason why we're giving these on a bye week, Sonny. So nicely done there. I do have 2, Q. I feel like 1 you probably might attend to. So I'm just going to go with the one that I originally thought of. And
feel free to throw them both out there. I got like 5 here that I can pick and choose from, and I feel good about my main one.
I'll keep it to 1 for now, unless we just start firing them off here before we wrap up. I'm going to stick to my 1. Kevin Byard is the best free agent signing that Ryan Poles has made in his tenure as Bears GM. Because I know, Q, you said when we were giving grades, you were like, well, he's great, but like, I think he's a key starter. I don't think he's quite blue chip for what this defense needs. Like, if you replace him, is there that much of a drop off? Think about it. That was Eddie Jackson, unfortunately, after the injury. And you saw the difference of how this defense got picked apart, not having that deep center fielder to be able to run with guys. And yeah, maybe Byard's not what he was in Tennessee, just from an age standpoint. He's been around the league for a long time, but his numbers suggest otherwise. I know, PFF grades are not gospel by any means, but they're still a good indication of how a player is playing over the course of the season. And he's got a 90 overall grade as a safety. That's 5th for the position of 135 graded safeties. He's been really freaking good this year, and he's been 10th the best against the run and 7th best in coverage. He is a top 10 safety in football the way he's playing. Hell, he's top 5 safety in football right now. He is the best free agent signing that Ryan Poles has made in his tenure as GM. Kevin Byard has been balling out at the free safety spot.
One Lucas Patrick has an argument with you, but anyway, there were a few people I could have gone with that one. Actually, at first I was thinking Nate Davis, but anyways, I think that's a very, very good one. And I think it's one that kind of surprises me to hear, but you're right. Like, I don't think there has been a better free agent signing, at least defensively. Like, I have a hot take for Sunday on offense that I might argue that a little bit, but I'm not going to get into the offensive side now. So I'm with you. Sonny, do you have any thoughts on Ron's hot take there?
No, I like it. I was with Ron. I think we gave the same grade for Byard for this season. I think he's also one of the clear reasons that our secondary has been, and I keep repeating myself, but this was also one of those takes that I had, the best defensive backs room in the NFL. And, when you have a guy like Jaylon Johnson and Kevin Byard back there, like, your room for error is just so massive because of just how good that they are with their jobs. So, I like it. I can't cycle through the list of all the free agents off the top of my head, but I'm leaning towards Ron probably being right here.
And I will say just quickly, I think PJ Edwards has a good case here. You talked about the green dot. You talked about being a leader on the defense. How about Kevin Byard, though, walking in year one in the team, and he's already like in front of the press and wearing, I think he's a captain. I believe he's the captain. So, I mean, that speaks volumes too, to Sonny's point, the best DB room in the league potentially, or one of the. I think a large reason is because of that inflection. I think they had that with Eddie as well. I think it's just it translates differently on the field when you have a guy that can still physically keep up with your youngins at the position. And that's no shot on Eddie. He got injured, and I really think that injury just set him back in his career. And it's a damn shame because I love Eddie Jackson as a football player.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for my hot take, no surprise here if you're one of my co-hosts or a listener of the show, I'm going to name three, but I'm only choosing one. I feel like I always do this. But first one, Sonny already mentioned. Bears have the deepest defensive back room in the NFL, top to bottom, best defensive back room. Number two was Jaylen Johnson is the best cornerback in the NFL. I think you can make a strong case for either of those. But, surprise, I went with the more pessimistic one.
I was waiting for it.
My hot take is that if the Chicago Bears do not add some NFL caliber defensive tackle depth to their roster, by the end of the year, the offense is going to be less of a concern than the defense because they're just going to keep getting run on against division opponents. That Detroit Lions offensive line, that Green Bay offensive line, and that Minnesota offensive line are going to tear through the Bears' backup defensive tackles with the way the roster's set up right now.
Yeah, I don't think you're far off, Q. And it's something I saw in your replies of hot takes that I think I'm going to apply in a trade deadline ideas article on the horizon here during the bye week. They need to do something. I tend to agree. And, you can get around it where some of these, these trades would be interesting, just given the landscape right now and the number of players moving around. There's a lot of really good ones out there. I asked the question of how Ryan Poles approaches that. Does he go for the guys that are on expiring contracts so you can just draft their replacement next year and you keep it moving? Or do you go for a guy that you might have to invest a little bit of financial capital in over the course of more than one season? I think based on that decision-making, it really opens up what Bears Truth 9 is asking for here. Who are some of the DTs we'd be interested in? A name that I saw in your replies was Dalvin Tomlinson from the Browns, but he's under contract for multiple seasons and at high cap value as well. Is that something Ryan Poles is interested in? I don't know, but I agree with you. They got to add something somehow, some way. It's like bullpen arms in baseball. I know, Sonny, you'll appreciate this. Bullpen arms in baseball. Sometimes you just got to find them on the waiver wire and just go get them. I feel like that's more Ryan Poles' speed, and I don't know when he's going to get them, but it feels like he's probably going to take that approach more so.
Sonny, do you have any thoughts on that?
It kind of coincides with one of the other options I had as a hot take, and it's me talking about that secondary, which I've been doing all episode long. I believe that secondary has moved up the Bears championship window to next year. Just the way Caleb is playing with all the pending free agents we have in that secondary, that means that that's potentially a lot of new contracts that we're going to have to give out. And, that means your salary cap number goes higher and higher. So just trying to connect to the two thoughts, it's like maybe, yeah, we need to be a little bit more aggressive in trying to find, obviously we're not going to find another Sweat out there, but a guy who can play a key role for this team this year and next, just so we can really be as aggressive as possible while we have a great value when it comes to contracts on that defensive side of the football, and Caleb still on the rookie contract.
Yeah, and so back to some of Bear Truth's comment here. Who are some of the DTs you'd be interested in? I don't need a starter. Like there have to be some DT3, DT4s around the league who will fit into the box of what you're willing to give up, teams willing to get rid of them for the right price, like for teams who are losing records. Jonathan Allen was a big name that was being thrown around before his injury happened. I don't need Jonathan Allen. I need a guy who can stuff the run as the DT3 playing 15 snaps a game. Like that, and still generate maybe a little bit threat of a pass rush at the same time. I don't have a specific name for you. Guys like the Cowboys, I feel like they sign a guy every year, trade for a guy every year who fills that similar role because they need to stop the run. There's nose tackles, it may be aged out there. Maybe a D-Day Jones if he's available, Bear Truth 9 says. Yeah, something like that. I haven't researched a specific name. I just know that there have to be options out there because DT3s cannot be valued so highly that the Bears won't give up what it takes to get one. And that's just where my head's at. And help, maybe that's Zach Pickens. I just have no idea if we're going to see him again this year or not. And if we are, what type of shape he's going to be in, because the guy hasn't played football since week 2. And at this point, it's starting to question, like, even if he gets back, how football ready is he going to be? Those groin injuries tend to linger. Like, you just don't know.
Yeah.
But do you guys have any final thoughts here before we wrap up and to, cover up some of my doom and gloom as we finish?
I'm going to go ahead and use my final thought as a quick chance just to quickly share my other hot take, and that is Gervon Dexter is quickly trending, I think as soon as next year, to being one of the best young defensive tackles in the NFL. If you look at the numbers, pretty straightforward, 11 quarterback hits. That puts him tied for pretty much top 5 in all of football. QB hits of 11. He's also got 4 sacks, which is among the leaders of interior defensive tackles, nose tackles, etc. He's good, and he's only 23 years old. I think that's the crazier part of all of it. Like, he's just going to continue to get better, and he's going to have a longer prime as a result of it, hopefully. That was my quick one, and that was my final thought.
Sonny, any final takeaways?
Yeah, unfortunately, spending an hour with Q has rubbed a little bit of that negativity over to me.
I'm an optimistic person, I promise.
We've given high grades to the defense so far this season, but if you take a look at that schedule, we didn't play many tough offenses, and so I hope fans don't get complacent. There's tougher times coming. And for me, the key to see how good this team really is if we can keep this, high B GPA that we had through the rest of this schedule. Because right now, it might be inflated because of the competition that we've played. And
my final thought here, I like this exercise. I think we should do this like before the regular season starts next year, because I think this is really good content, really good review of the roster and what the Bears have. So I'm going to keep this Excel sheet, and I'm probably going to bring this back next year. But thank you guys so much for watching with us, listening with us. Thank you to my 2 co-hosts for coming on and talking with me. Now, gentlemen, why don't we get out of here the only way we know how?
Bear down, boys.
Bear down, baby.
Bear down.